Hello everyone. So before I start with my talk, I would like to acknowledge people who has helped me in these excavations at Kotada Bhadli. That is Deccan College, then Gujarat State Department of Archaeology, Archaeological Survey of India, all the collaborators and the specialists, Mr. Bharat Dige and Mr. Devdatta Phule, and Dr. V.N. Prabhakarji from IIT Gandhinagar, Gujarat for organizing this talk. Today I'm going to present on role of small sites in the larger complex of Harappan economy. Now, as we know that, right from the beginning of discovery of Harappan civilization, many people have worked on different aspects of Harappan civilization, be it settlement patterns, settlement distribution, site hierarchies, or trade patterns and all that. But then when we look at the whole publications and the literature of Harappan civilization, we find that particularly in the sense of Harappan trade network, people are mostly concentrating on the kind of material they are getting, and based on the stylistic similarities and the comparisons, they are basically talking about the trade routes or the migration of objects from one place to another place. And then recently, with the advancement of scientific archaeology or applications of sciences like XRD, XRF, neutron activation analysis, and so forth, so basically now people are pinpointing the raw material resources which were available and how they are exploited by Harappan people, and then how the objects were reached from different sites from different region. But now in that case, the major problem is that we don't know exactly how the trade mechanism operated during the prime of whether it is mature Harappan or the late Harappan time bracket. So in this case, the small sites are very important to understand, because these small sites are made for some specific function to play in the larger economic context, as well as understanding the trade patterns of mature Harappan or the later periods. With this intention, we actually selected this site of Kotada Bhadli for the excavations, which is a very tiny site, but it is well fortified. So we selected this site to understand the exact function of the site and what kind of function it is playing in the larger Harappan economic complex. So this is the map which shows a large number of Harappan settlements in Gujarat. And when you come to Kachch particularly, again, you can see a huge concentration of Harappan sites, which are mostly fortified settlements. So one of them is this, the site of Kotada Bhadli, which is located on the confluence of two rivers, which are completely dried up now. It's a quite a small site, 60-meter by 60-meter, and it is well fortified. So this is the general location map, which shows the drainage patterns and all in that area. When we excavated this site, so the different areas were excavated, like the fortification wall, the central area. So, here in this photograph, you can see the area between the structure and the fortification wall. So this area is completely vacant. We don't have any sort of a construction activity at the site. These are the kind of structures what we have got in the central location. This is a multi-room structure, and then we have intercommunicating doors within this structure. One of the room was identified as a probable granary, because we have two huge storage jars embedded in the ground. So probably it was utilized particularly for the storage purpose. Then this is the southeastern bastion of the site. This is the middle bastion. Then this is towards the southwestern corner. There is an open space, so probably that was basically a gate or the opening to the site. And next to that, we have this guard room which we have exposed, but due to the limited time, we couldn't excavate the gateway completely. Then this is the inner face of the fortification wall, and then against that you can see there is a huge dump of ash deposit at the site. Now, when we look at the antiquities and the kind of material what we have obtained it, so it is a very poor sort of material what we have. So there are evidences of weights, but then the typical cubical weights are missing in the assemblies. There is only one that sort of a thing what we have got. Then there are shell net sinkers, shell bangles, then there is one terracotta floor tile, steatite beads, then carnelian beads, agate beads, then some bone beads and all that. But the major sort of a finding from the site is the copper bangles, some copper rings, and then the copper stylus with gold plating. So this is the major discovery what we have. But as you can see, like the antiquities are very poor from the site, and not much of the exotic stuff we have found. Like this, there are no seals, there are no ceilings, and nothing of like a long carnelian beads and all that. So it is not a very typical of mature Harappan stuff what we are getting at the site. And it shows a kind of a lower economy or a poor economy at the site. Then the ceramic repertoire is again quite similar. Like we have black on red variety, then we have bichrome variety, we have red slip variety, red untreated variety, painted kaolinite variety, then unpainted kaolinite variety, red slip gray variety, then untreated gray variety, black and red ware, and a few shades of Rizzo slip ware. Now, because as I said, like the site doesn't have any sort of exotic antiquities which can denote the trade. Then, as far as the agriculture is concerned, like there is no evidence of any agricultural products in the form of botanical remains from the site as well. So it was very difficult to understand what exactly the function of this site is because of the poor nature of the settlement. Now, in general case, when we get some sort of objects like steatite, carnelian, then we are getting copper. So people talk about, like the site being a trading site because the material is coming from different areas to this particular site. But then in reality, the archaeological material is not supportive of this kind of hypothesis, at least at the site of Kotada Bhadli. So we started looking at different objects to understand what exactly the role of Kotada Bhadli is in a larger complex. For that, we analyzed this copper stylus using non-destructive method for lead extraction. So the PB isotope shows that it probably came from Singana Khetri area of northern Rajasthan, and this work has been done by Randall Law. So here you can see this is the triangle that is the copper stylus, and this is the area of Singana Khetri area. Then we actually analyze four steatite beads from the site. Now, out of these four steatite beads, three were not actually original steatites. They were made from a locally available material that is called as a nontronite, and then we are calling it as a imitation steatite. And then Dr. Brad Chase is going to present on this in this conference, so he will be able to explain more about the composition and all that. Now, when we look at the distribution of this nontronite in this area, so Bhattacharya has reported that this particular nontronite is found at Matanugad area. So probably this is the area which was utilized by these Kotada people for making these imitation steatite beads. And there is only one bead which is actually original steatite, which comes from the Araulis of northern Rajasthan. So again, here you can see this is the area from where the bead of Kotada has reached here. Then we have found a micro chloride bead sketch. So it was within a small pot, and the raw material has been identified by Professor Mark Kenoyer. Now, again, if you look at the source of this chloride, so we have three sources of chloride in Kachchh region, that is Donsa, Kodki, and Narayan Sarovar. So probably one of the source was utilized by these people for manufacturing of microchloride beads. Then the shale objects mostly shows that marine estuarine taxa. But as you can see that Kotada Bhadli is quite inland, and there is inland site. And so probably the kind of material what we are getting at the site is coming from some other area. So, and then the shale working evidence is also not there at the site of Kotada Bhadli. So most probably the shales which we are getting at the site were coming from the site of Khirsara, which is identified as a shale working site. Then, as far as the microlithic assemblage is concerned, then it has points, triangles, lunettes, trapezoids, borers, burins, scrapers, and different type of tools. So all of these tools are manufactured on chalcedony, which is available in Deccan Trap area. So this is the Deccan Trap area, which is in a blue color, and it is almost like 20 kilometers away from the settlement. Then we have done analysis of animal bones. So there are two types of works which are being carried out on the bones. One is by Pankaj Goyal and another by Kalyan Shekhar Chakrabarti. So Goyal's work basically shows the age profiles and basically talks about the presence of stress marks on large number of cattle, which suggests that these animals were regularly used for traction. Whereas the work done by Chakrabarti on enamel isotope analysis, carried on 23 teeth samples of cattle, buffalo, and sheep goat, shows that the animals were raised locally. So here we can see that we are getting two different kinds of animals, the one which are used particularly for the traction, and another group which is raised locally, probably used for some kind of meat and dairy products. Now obviously the dairy product and what we are talking about, so we have done the residue analysis of the vessels like cooking vessels, ladles, and perforated jars. So from that we have the evidence of animal fat, vegetable oil, milk fat, meat, and milk. So again it shows that, probably like the milk was boiled before consumption or for making other dairy products. So again the animal economy what we are getting is shows that some part of animals were actually utilized only for the dietary purpose and not for the traction purpose or not for the trading purpose. Now this particular ash which is against the inner face of the fortification wall, that has been found at many sites, like it is there at the site of Pithar, Kanmer, even at Dholavira we have that. And then this ash is always associated with some kind of a manufacturing activity or a craft activity. So these activities results in a dump, and that ash is basically put against the fortification wall. But then looking at Kotada Bhadli, like even in the excavation or GPR surveys, there is no evidence of any sort of a craft activity at the site. So it shows that this ash is not a product of some sort of craft activity. So when we actually did the chemical analysis of soil and pollen analysis, so it showed that basically it is a product of burning of animal dung and wood for fuel and occupational debris. So again this shows that the some kind of a waste management system was in place at the site of Kotada Bhadli, though it is a very tiny and small settlement. Now, in nutshell, when we look at Kotada Bhadli, so these are the different types of material what we have at site. So like chloride, so that is coming from Kodki, Donsa, and Narayan Sarovar. Then you have nontronite coming from Matanugad. Then you have copper that is coming from Alwar area, and then you have steatite coming from Tosha Mills. Now, in such circumstances, when we get such kind of material, then people have tried to say that the site is a trading site or it is an important site because the all trade network is happening at the site. But these kind of interpretations are quite problematic and complicated, because then we need to have a substantial archaeological data to support this kind of hypothesis. So what is the alternative to understand that? When you are talking about the trade pattern, when you are talking about the trade systems or the trade mechanism, then the movement of object and the movement of people from one side to another side cannot happen overnight. People cannot travel 100 kilometer or 200 kilometer at a stretch. They need to have some sort of a resting places, they need to have some sort of a places where they can keep their animals, or they can stay for some time and then they can move ahead. So these are the what we call them as a pit stop settlements, or we call them as a caravanserais, or in modern sense these are like inns or motels what we have on the highways, which are basically the support system for the traders. So in that case, when we look at Gujarat, so the date for Kotada Bhadli ranges from 2300 to 1900 BC. So based on AMS radiocarbon dating, C14 radiocarbon dating, and OSL. So when we look at the comparison of these dates, so the Dholavira stage 4 and 5 comes in that bracket. Then Sur Kotada 1A and 1B comes in that bracket. Kanmer 2B comes in that bracket. Pabumat 1A and 1B. Then Khirsara 1A and 1B comes in that bracket, and the site of Navinal comes in the bracket of 2300 to 1900 BCE. Now, when we look at all the sites which are excavated and have been dated properly, so this is the map which shows the majority of the sites which are dated, and based on these sites dating and the cultural material, the other explored sites have been dated. So if we put all these sites together, the excavated sites and the reported sites, so we get a some sort of a network which is happening in this area. So when we look at the Nageshwar, so the Nageshwar being a shell cutting center, Nageshwar is connected with major sites like Dholavira. So to reach to Dholavira, we have in between these smaller sites. So the trade route from Nageshwar starts, that goes through Pithar, Kuntasi, Bagasra, Shikarpur, and via Surkotada it reaches to Dholavira. There is a one offshoot which takes place from Shikarpur going to Kanmer and reaching to the site of Dholavira. There is one more offshoot from Shikarpur which goes towards the west from Kotada to Khedoi, taking the coastal route going up to Navinal, Thodi, and to the Kirsara. Then the second route from Kirsara that cuts across the middle part of the Kutch. So that goes from Shikarpur to Kotada Anjar, cutting Kotada Bhadli, it goes to Khirsara. Then there is a route coming from Dholavira, Pabumat, Kotada Anjar, and again cutting to site of Kotada Bhadli, going up to Khirsara. And from Khirsara, it is going directly towards the Lakpat, and from Lakpat, it can enter into the lower Sindh region of Pakistan. So these sites, what we have in between, are mostly the sites where these pit stop settlements were there, or these were utilized as a caravanserai. Because if you don't have these sort of caravanserais, then the trade route cannot operate. So these are basically some sort of a backbones of your trade mechanism. But unfortunately, these sort of caravanserais are not reported anywhere, or they are not identified on the basis of functionality in the Harappan studies. So when we look at the this distribution pattern, and when we actually work on the functionality of these smaller sites, then only we can be able to understand the trade mechanism in a better way. Then when we look at this map of British period, that is the Burness 1831 map, so he has actually started from Bhuj and gone up to the area of Tata. So here again you can see the same trade route he has utilized to reach into the Pakistan area, and this red dot what you are seeing is the site of Kotada Bhadli. So here again you can see this is the old Harappan map, this is the British map, and this is the modern period map, which basically again shows the similar kind of route which they are utilizing even today. There is one route which goes from the central part of Kutch, then there is a one route which goes along the coastal line going up to the Lakpat, and from Lakpat it enters into the Pakistan. So there is no change actually right from Harappan times to the modern times in the trade route or the trade mechanism what has been used for so many years. So the whole point of excavating this small site was to understand the functionality, not only because we are getting some material, we should call it as a trading center or agricultural settlement, but we need to have archaeological data to interpret the sites in a better context. And probably when we are using such kind of hypotheses like a caravanserais which are supported by the scientific work what we have done, so it proves that there is something called as a caravanserais or pit stop settlements in the Harappan era as well. They are not only found in the early historic or medieval period, but unfortunately because we have not excavated many of the smaller sites, and even if they are excavated, they are not excavated and analyzed to understand the functions of those sites. So that's why we are lacking behind in understanding the trade mechanism of Harappans. So probably this is the only site, Kotada Bhadli, which is like we are claiming as a caravanserai in Harappan times. And like all these smaller sites needs to be restudied and looked into that, so that only we can understand what exactly the trade mechanism or the pattern which people followed during the Harappan times can be understood, and then we can have a better picture of Harappan trade network and the movement of people and movement of object, rather than just connecting different sites with each other without understanding how they were behaving and what kind of interrelationship is there between the smaller settlement and the bigger settlement. So that's why this whole exercise of small site excavation was carried out, and then we are able to prove that there is a caravanserai in the Harappan times as well. So I thank you all of you for your patience and listening to me. Thank you very much.